Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 5th part of What If Naruto Gave Up After Hinata's Death. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Well, congratulations, it's been 3 days since you told Anko-chan that you are a Namikaze, the son of the fourth, and yet no one from Iwa, or any of your father's other enemies, has come and tried to convince your head to depart your body by means of various pointy and or sharp objects. Yay! Exclaimed Naruto. Kyuubi laughed. I know you want to do it as a Namikaze this time, but why did you have to tell that snake woman first? I didn't mean to, Naruto admitted. But she was becoming increasingly suspicious of me and my abilities. Which is your fault? What happened to keeping a low profile? Shinigami sarcastically asked. Hey. It's not my fault. Believe me. Finish that sentence, Shinigami said, his voice and aura demonically cold. I challenge you. Naruto gulped. He needed to get that verbal tick out of his system as soon as possible. Anyway. It wasn't my fault that the Hyuga clan treated Hinata so badly, and you didn't object to me teaching them a lesson at the time. To be honest, I'm still surprised you didn't break down their front door, try to talk the lot of them to death before shoving a Rasengan in their face, Kyuubi mused. It does demonstrate that he has grown a lot, Shinigami agreed. See. Naruto triumphantly exclaimed. Small profile. Aside from the fact that you basically told Anko that you were going to do something to the Hyuga before you actually did it, then you fought a taijutsu battle far beyond your supposed abilities, knocked a Jonin unconscious, tied her up, and threatened to leave her naked in Jiraiya's company. Naruto and the Kyuubi both snickered. They'd both spent far too much time with Ero Sennin to do anything else. Aside from that, given the number of hints you dropped before leaving, I wouldn't be surprised if Kurenai figured it out as well. Naruto slumped. Shinigami gave him a friendly smile. However, unlike Anko, Kurenai is more likely to believe that you know some very dangerous people than that you did the job yourself, which could work to our advantage. It does mean, however, that Yurei will have to appear before the Hokage, and you can bet your bottom dollar that he'll be told of this. Which leaves my first question unanswered, Kyuubi grumbled. Why didn't you tell Anko-chan you're a Namikaze? Naruto shook his head. It seemed like the only course of action that I could take. She already knew that I had torn the Hyuga clan a new one. A normal academy student would have found that impossible, which meant that I had to be an abnormal academy student. The only people who could possibly pull something like that off would be either a genius or a spy. A very bad thing indeed, Shinigami remarked sarcastically. Naruto gave a nod. Especially when said interrogator is Anko Mitarashi. I just showed her that I had the potential to do some major damage, though I thought she'd be more impressed with who my father was rather than who my mother was. Flashback. Naruto was quickly pinned to the side of the cottage by a large amount of kunai after informing Anko of his ancestry. Gah! He exclaimed. Okay, Blondie, I'll believe you're the fourth's child. It's hard not to, but who was your mother? Naruto locked his gaze on her. I don't know. He exclaimed, still irritated by this fact. I know her surname was Uzumaki, she had red hair, and I know what her face looked like. Anko developed a strange expression on her face. Do you have a photograph? She inquired slowly. Naruto nodded and reached into one of his jumpsuit's many pockets, pulling out his favorite photograph of his mother and father. It was a photo of them both in the hospital. His mother lay on the bed, the blankets all bunched up at her knees, dressed in a light hospital gown. Her face was adorned with a fiercely proud, warm, maternal smile, and both of her hands were occupied. The blonde man standing next to her had one hand on her tanned hand. Her other hand was protectively cradling her belly. His father, on the other hand, was dressed in Hokage robes and a Jonin flak vest. With a slightly puzzled expression on his face, he clutched the hand of his wife, the future mother of his child. He didn't even try to hide his wide, dopey grin, which threatened to split his face in half. On the back of the photograph, a note was written. It said, "The soon-to-be parents." Naruto's mother and father both looked overjoyed at the news that they would be having a child. Naruto carried this photograph in his left breast pocket. It was stupid, illogical, and sentimental, and Naruto had chastised himself for it numerous times. It was just that having the photo with him, so close to his heart, made him feel connected to the parents he'd never met. It kept them together. Naruto held the photo tightly, taking care not to crease it, and showed it to Anko. He had assumed he would be ready for any reaction. He was mistaken. "Squeeeeeee!" exclaimed Anko, before glomping on Naruto with extreme prejudice, tearing his jumpsuit where it was pinned to the wall by the kunai. "Gerroff of me, you crazy bitch!" yelled Naruto, desperately performing a substitution jutsu and climbing the nearest tree. Sakura, Ino, and a slew of others of the gentler persuasion sneezed in unison somewhere in the village, alerting the boy they were stalking to their presence. Sasuke bolted down the street, feeling for some reason that he wasn't as alone as he once thought. Back with the crazy couple atop the mountain, Naruto found himself tied up in a rather large snake, being threatened with a rusty kunai by the summoner of said snake. "If you ever tell anyone about what just happened, you will wake up in the morning minus your balls," Anko said calmly and seriously. Naruto, on the other hand, was anything but calm. "Are you shitting me, woman? Are you bloody bipolar or something?" Anko laughed. "No, I'm just concerned about my reputation. Are we clear?" Naruto looked at the kunai nervously, wondering why Anko would carry such poorly maintained equipment. Perhaps these kinds of situations were more common for her than he would like to believe. "Hehe, no need to find out." "Crystal." "Good," Anko said as he let go of his scaly bonds. "It's just that your mother is my idol. She was the last of her name," Naruto cut in. Anko's eyes blinked. "What?" "Tell me your mother's name," Naruto requested. "Please," the ache in his voice was almost enough to make Anko cry. Anko sighed and sat down, wondering what it was about today that she was doing so much emotional talking to preteens. Her name was Kushina Uzumaki. "Who is Kushina Uzumaki?" "Yeah, kid, you have your mother's last name. I'm not sure why no one ever thought you were her child. You act a lot alike. Could you tell me about her?" Naruto inquired timidly. Anko exhaled a sigh. "I'm not sure how much of that I could do because I was so young at the time, but I can tell you a couple of things." Naruto gave a nod. "Please," he begged, his longing palpable. Anko realized right then and there that he was just a child. A child who had been in pain for so long, wondering, questioning, and desperate to learn something about his origins, even if it was just one small detail about his parents. One small detail about who he was and where he came from. And now he was asking her to be the one to try to fill the void within his soul. Anko sucked. "So, no worries. Kushina Uzumaki was the heir of the Whirlpool village. She came to the village when she was still a young girl and went through the academy with all the other students. She quickly established herself as a force to be reckoned with when a bunch of bullies decided to pick on her. They never did it again. It was your father who rescued her, and the two of them began hanging out a lot after that. Unfortunately, shortly after that came the destruction of Uzushiogakure. Anko sighed as she sat down on the ground and began lecturing. She reminded Naruto of Iruka for a brief moment. The Whirlpool village was much smaller than most of the great villages, but the quality of its shinobi was unreal. A whole confederacy of villages acted in concert to destroy it before they got too powerful. The odds were more than 30 to 1. Despite that, the Whirlpool ninja, spearheaded by the Uzumaki clan. "Yes, your mother's clan," Anko said, noticing Naruto's rather stunned expression. "Did they?" Naruto inquired. Anko gave a ruthless smile. "That they did." The Uzumaki army had been sitting there at the battlefield for a full day, seemingly waiting for their deaths. The alliance underestimated them. Despite it being the reason for them banding together against the Whirlpool village, they forgot about one very important thing. Fuinjutsu. The Uzumaki clan were unrivaled masters of Fuinjutsu. And the Uzumaki had had a full day to set the field of battle. Anko grinned. All except the ruling clan of the Whirlpool, and all except the clan of the Uzumaki. Naruto lifted his eyes, a deep look of wonder in his eyes. The generals of the Confederacy offered them terms for surrender, but if they accepted, the ninja before them would quickly catch up with the civilians that they had sworn to protect. They had sworn an oath. They had given their word. And the Uzumaki never go back on their word. Kumo's bolt was the next to fall, 250 of Kumo's top lightning and kenjutsu specialists. Disdaining jutsu, the Uzumaki rushed to meet them. And meet them they did, fighting blade to blade. It was not a fight. It was a massacre. The Uzumaki had better swords, better techniques, better skills, better speed, better men, better experience, and a better purpose. The only advantage. However, reinforcements were a luxury that the Uzumaki lacked. But they didn't seem to mind. They had spent their entire lives preparing for this day, and for the Uzumaki, that was a very long time. The Uzumaki clan is said to have lived extremely long lives and to have had more experience and training than anyone else. That is correct. If I recall correctly, some of those who died in this battle were well over 200 years old. Shish. I'm paying attention to the story. The Confederacy had ensured that they were unable to send any messages to their allies. They were about to perish. They were aware of this. This was accepted by them. But they weren't going down without a fight, Anko concluded with a wolfish grin. The enemy was finally able to bring back information to their leaders after the next attack. Every single Uzumaki was covered in seals, rendering their ninjutsu nearly useless. Wind jutsu became a gentle breeze. Lightning would simply be grounded, causing them no harm. They walked through fire and didn't get burned. Most earth jutsu were ineffective because they had sealed the ground, preventing chakra from entering the earth beneath them. And the Uzumaki were water jutsu masters. Not only that, but the armor they wore somehow reduced the amount of damage they took when hit. The red-headed clan had every advantage as they bided their time. Wave after wave of shinobi was sent against the Uzumaki. Wave after wave broke upon them like water against a rock, but with each wave, a little was worn away. The fourth day passed. And the fifth. And the sixth. The reinforcements had arrived, discovering that the barrier could be entered but not exited. And still, the Uzumaki fought, with blade, fist, seal, and jutsu. The commanders of the Confederacy looked on in. Many had died in the face of that clan, with little to show for it. It is said that the Uzumaki must have had some of the best medics in the world among their ranks, because many Uzumaki had been dealt injuries that would have proved fatal to an ordinary man without the best of care. The healing factor of Uzumaki. We both know that it can be accelerated with the use of chakra. And some of the older Uzumakis may have been storing chakra for more than a century. Their metal and fuinjutsu armor had been the only thing keeping them alive for so long, and with each jutsu stopped, each blow turned aside, chakra was used to save them. However, if their chakra failed, they were quickly defeated. They didn't have time to eat or sleep. Chakra was burned in order to generate the energy required to fight. Sleep deprivation began to take its toll, making the Uzumaki sloppy. 52 fighters were left to continue the fight. The 7th day passed. They remained firm, swaying on their feet even as they spilled the blood of those who charged against them. More terms for surrender had been offered, all had been refused, and some in the Confederacy were beginning to wonder whether they should be the ones to surrender. On the morning of the 9th day, there was a lull in the fighting as the sun rose above the horizon, bathing everything beneath it in scarlet hues. Only 20 members of the once proud clan remained. They were the only ones who had survived. They were all dressed in red from head to toe. They had shed so much blood that it appeared they had bathed in it. Each of them was aware that this was their final day on this planet. Despite this, they had no regrets. They had followed through on their promise. It took the slowest of civilians 8 days to reach a point where they couldn't be caught before reaching safety, even if they were pursued by the fastest of enemy shinobi. They looked around at the piles of bodies that surrounded them, both enemy and ally, but the enemy far outnumbered the allies. They examined the faces of those who remained in their clan, in their family. They were brothers, sisters, fathers, mothers, husbands, wives, cousins, nephews, nieces, and grandparents to each other. They were, however, comrades. They'd bonded on such a deep level over the years, trusting each other to the extreme on the battlefield, and the last week had forged those bonds anew, stronger than ever. One of them began to laugh, followed by another, and so on. As the light of the red dawn crossed their faces, they were all laughing. The sound of their laughter reached those waiting at the other end, ready to fight the red-haired demons. The sound made them shiver. They were no longer eager to confront them in order to avenge their comrades. They all simply hoped that they would not be the ones chosen to face them next. But no one would have a choice this time. The last of the Uzumaki charged the enemy, still laughing. It was suicide because the Confederacy was no longer protected by the barrier that had forced them to fight on more equal ground. The Uzumaki was aware of this. They charged at the impossible numbers before them, blades leading the way, casting their laughter into Shinigami's teeth. Uzumaki Isamu, leader of Uzushiogakure, clan head of the Uzumaki, and father of Uzumaki Kushina, led them. Still laughing, they crashed through the front lines of the completely dumbfounded Confederacy, driving deep into the enemy ranks. It is said that they fought as one man, a perfect fighting force, seemingly able to read each other's minds as they acted in concert. They had used the Uzumaki clan's last ace, a jutsu known only to the clan head, and sacrificed all the long years left ahead of them for one last huge chakra boost. They battled deep into the enemy's heart, laughing the entire time. They had done it. They had succeeded in what they set out to do, and there was no better company to face the Shinigami with than the ones they fought alongside, but they would not be the only ones. When they arrived at the heart of the camp, they activated the last seal that they had prepared before the army arrived. Chains sprung from the earth. Many, many chains made of golden light, surrounding the Uzumaki in a protective dome. Jutsu upon jutsu upon jutsu was thrown against those chains, but they held firm. One by one, the Uzumaki looked at each other's faces, not wanting the last sight that they saw to be the ones who wanted their destruction. They were secure in the love that they had found within each other. Smiling at one another, They took each other by the hand, creating a different kind of chain, a human one. With eyes closed, they formed a circle, just behind the barrier, their backs towards those who wished for their death. Uzumaki Isamu stood at the chain's end, his clanmate's hands clasped against his shoulders, asking, "What is the secret of a chain?" "It breaks at the weakest link," replied his clan. "Who exactly are we?" "We are the Uzumaki clans, the Uzumaki chains, links." "Aye," he said proudly, "we are the Uzumaki, and our chains are strong enough to hold Kyuubi himself. Remember this. Remember us." All that remained of the Uzumaki who fought in the battle of the Laughing Scarlet Warriors was given to Isamu as he performed his final technique. It is said that enough chakra was used to rival the Biju themselves. However, Konoha became aware of the battle for the first time when a pillar of white light reached the heavens, scorching the sky and leaving the Uzumaki clan's symbol in the form of a cloud that lasted 3 days, the Uzumaki funeral pyre. This marked the start of the Third Shinobi World War. The Uzumaki clan faded from memory during the chaos that followed, as day-to-day life became a struggle to survive. Regardless, Konoha changed the white swirl of the Uzumaki on their Chunin vests to red in honor of their sacrifice. And, while Konoha won the war, many believe that if it hadn't been for the Uzumaki, the outcome would have been very different. After that day, your mother changed. She clung to her friends with all she had, the final link in the chain. But she was a sight to behold on the battlefield. A new name was whispered among the enemy, completely merciless against those who had slaughtered her family. She had earned the nickname, Red Hot Habanero, when she was younger, and she was still known as that among her friends. Those who faced her now referred to her as the last Scarlet Warrior, a moniker she despised. It brought back memories of what she had lost. Despite this, Kushina grew to have a kill count that only one other person surpassed, Minato Namikaze. She was one of the greatest kunoichi of all time, and she died in front of the Kyuubi. "What's with the seal on your navel? That's not just your father's job, kid. Your mother assisted in the creation of that. She was my idol, the last of a great clan, and if I can become half the woman she was, I'll be happy." Damn, that was a long flashback. "You had no idea your family was so badass, did you?" Shinigami inquired. "No, I honestly had no idea," Naruto said, shaking his head. "I have a lot to live up to, don't I?" "You could say that. It was a very interesting story." "Yeah, admit it, just talking to Anko was worthwhile." "Okay, so it wasn't entirely unprofitable. Not to mention that we wouldn't be here right now if I hadn't talked to her." "I'm still not convinced that's a good thing." Naruto frowned as he took in his surroundings. He was sitting at the edge of a clearing on a large submerged granite boulder, surrounded by a number of trees that had obviously been given steroids and fertilizer, as well as the occasional deadly plant, and the clearing's center was made up of heavily churned up earth. "Look, we needed a quiet place to train. How many hours of training have I squandered because someone decides that the field I'm using is a good place for them to get some exercise? A few 100,000. Naruto blinked, surprised that it was so large. "And I've only learned 3 new jutsu?" he asked, perplexed. Shinigami laughed. "You can do a Rasengan in each hand simultaneously while water walking in 1.5 seconds. We've designed your Futen Rasengan so that you can operate it with just one hand. And you stated that it was impossible. You've also mastered the Keizuken and Kazebo to the point where you can use them in a punch, kick, or wave of your hand multiple times in a row. Your wind streaming on weapons has progressed to the point where you can do it almost unconsciously and extend it to laughable proportions when using your mother's katana. Then there's that wind style, void you got from your father's house. You still don't realize how useful that will be. You've half-mastered several other Winjutsu, 5 different henge, your chakra control is better than it's ever been, and you've half-mastered about 7 other jutsu, including the Kage Kanai no Jutsu, which you started yesterday. Shinigami's eye was twitching in a disturbing way by the time he finished his rant. Not to mention that he's also begun work on his own Fuinjutsu and his taijutsu is better than it has ever been, Kyuubi added helpfully, dropping his ears and placing his head between his paws. Seals appall me. Yeah, but, a ferocious roar filled with hatred and bloodlust pierced the air. Shut up you! Naruto yelled, a small amount of killer intent leaking from him, the roar cut off as if by a knife. Naruto nodded, satisfied. I'm still not as powerful as when I had Sage Mode under my command. And I need to get as much training as I can. I've got a lot of work ahead of me. You'd get a lot more done if you spent less time with the Hyuga chick, Shinigami observed, noting Naruto's furious expression, which gradually morphed into a sadistic smile. And don't even think about telling my wife that I said that, Naruto chuckled evilly. Anyway. Are you going to stop that? I'd say 3 days is about right to introduce Yurei to the old man. Yay! Naruto exclaimed, wiggling in delight, as the shot he was leaning against growled warningly. Without turning around, Naruto drove a sharply pointed elbow, his other hand supporting it, behind him, and a loud, oof, of air being driven from a large set of lungs came from the gargantuan white tiger Naruto had been using as a headrest. Are you going to get rid of that thing soon? Naruto frowned, absent-mindedly rubbing his hand against the heavily restrained feline's soft fur. Soft. Probably. The tiger had given up struggling a long time ago, finally admitting that it couldn't escape on its own. Naruto had once again been a little bit excessive. Each limb had been tied down, with the supports driven into the sun-warmed granite beneath them. Long, steel staples had also been driven into the stone over the cat's limbs, though not deep enough to pinch. Are you sure that's not a little too expensive? Kyuubi inquired, feeling a pang of sympathy for the imprisoned beast. He reminds me of Tora, Naruto deadpanned as he cocked his head at the fox. Are you sure you've done enough? Kyuubi asked, blinking. He inquired, knowing that Kyuubi was familiar with that particular feline. Tora had escaped from this exact setup before, albeit scaled down, according to the genin sent to capture the demon Neko of the Fire Daimyo's wife, and Naruto had personally witnessed the cat escape from her owner's arms before, so it wasn't beyond the realms of possibility. Come on, come on. Let it go, Shinigami advised gently. It tore my jumpsuit, Naruto grumbled, flinging his head back against the cat's side, whose shoulder was still above Naruto's head even though it was pinned to the ground. As well as your skin, fat layer, and numerous muscles. Naruto brushed aside the details, saying, never mind that. Take a look at this jumpsuit. It would take an eternity to remove all the bloodstains and just as long to repair the slashes. I tell you, it's ruined. Ruined. So we should award a prize to the kitty. Big deal. Can we go now? Naruto glared ferociously into space. It was a good glare, worthy of mention, and for a brief moment, he considered going to his happy place, just so Kyuubi could see it. Can you please remind me why you didn't just kill it in the first place? Shinigami inquired. Anko-san said they were endangered, and the Forest of Death is kind of like a reserve for them, Naruto sighed. Serves you right, Shinigami shrugged. You should have paid closer attention. You wouldn't have been ambushed in the first place if you had. Yeah, Naruto grumbled, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Several thousand clones appeared in the surrounding area, with not a puff of smoke to indicate their creation. Naruto swears the cat stopped in shock, if only for a moment. A loud sound resounded, similar to a sharp crack of thunder, as every single clone stood to attention. Ah! The clones obeyed. Alright, boys. You already know what to do. Sir. Sir, yes. Carry on. Nodded Naruto, satisfied. It had taken a lot of work to get his clones to act more like soldiers and less like idiots, but Naruto had succeeded. He had begun attempting it after hearing a number of stories from Shinigami about ancient, dead civilizations from all over the world, particularly stories about a place called Sparta. Those dudes sounded like a real bunch of hard asses. Shinigami stated, his voice bored, "You're going to be late for the academy." Naruto smiled. Not at all. He made a familiar sign by clapping his hands together. Henge. A puff of smoke engulfed him, and when it cleared, a magnificent peregrine falcon stood on the ground. He surveyed the scene with imperious eyes before leaping off the ground. However, after gaining initial momentum, Naruto quickly dipped back down, creating a collision course with the ground. Flap, you dumb bird. Flap. And he flapped, narrowly avoiding becoming a pancake on the ground before collapsing into a tree. Well. That was extremely anticlimactic, Kyuubi stated this. Naruto lowered his head, ruffling his feathers before shaking his head, attempting to relieve his sudden headache. It was ineffective. As a result, I haven't had much experience flying. Don't pass judgment on me. Too late, the two immortals agreed. Swearing to himself, Naruto rose from the ground once more and made his way to the academy. Shinigami pondered whether he should remind Naruto of all the dangerous animals that inhabited the Forest of Death. The extremely large, extremely hungry, and extremely dangerous animals. However, he had just left one tied in a field. Oh well, he'd probably remember soon enough. Naruto had arrived at the academy on time, having developed a healthy aversion to spiders along the way. Large spiders in particular. Especially large spiders with deceptively thin-looking silk and so many big hungry eyes with mandibles dripping with poison as they moved towards you, clicking in anticipation with their 8 hairy legs motoring their fat-segmented body containing an empty stomach soon to be filled with the flesh and blood of a poor innocent blonde boy who had a pair of powerful, immortal beings sealed in his gut, neither of whom warned said bastards. All he had to do now was try not to fall asleep during Iruka sensei's boring lecture on the shinobi's uniform and armor. Wait. This could be fascinating. Iruka sensei? With his hand in the air, Naruto said. Are you sure, Naruto? Iruka acknowledged the fact. He had been discussing the Chunin vest at the time and was taken aback. Naruto did not usually ask questions voluntarily. He assumed it was because his questions were usually met with laughter from the rest of the class, which, while providing him with some of the attention he craved, he did not particularly enjoy. Why do Konoha's Chunin and Jonin wear a red swirl on the backs of their Chunin vests? It's not something that the other villages have, is it? Iruka's eyes blinked. This was not included in the curriculum because no one thought it was necessary. It was the responsibility of the parents and elders to explain to their children the significance of these swirls. Iruka realized the parents had neglected their responsibilities after seeing the students' confused expressions. Can anyone tell me why Konoha wears this symbol? Sakura raised her hand, much to everyone's surprise. Yes? It's to represent Konoha's respect for a great clan that was instrumental in the founding of this village, she explained, her voice breathless. Iruka simply nodded. Good. And what was the clan's name? Sakura shook her head. I'm not sure. It's not like it matters. In any case, the clan is extinct. No, it isn't. The entire class focused on Naruto because of the dangerous sound in his voice. Not yet, at any rate. His face was shadowed by a dark expression. Iruka arched his brow. Naruto was aware. He wasn't sure how, because he didn't know many people who would have told him about his family. Perhaps the third Hokage? Iruka decided to deviate from the original plan. He enjoyed teaching about Konoha's history, and he believed it was critical that the children learn about this particular clan. They are not completely extinct, as Naruto claims. He would know, after all, because the spiral is the Uzumaki clan's symbol. The class let out a loud surprise exclamation. Impossible. That Dobi could not possibly be a member of a clan. Ino yelled sarcastically. Naruto locked his gaze on her. I'm the last of my clan's members. So keep your mouth shut. His voice was dark. Cold. Sasuke, on the other hand, turned to face Naruto. They both had something in common. It was probably some pitiful clan that Konoha pitied back in the day, Kiba sneered. Enough. Except for Naruto, everyone jumped out of their seats as Iruka used his demon head jutsu, the next step up from his patented big head jutsu. Meanwhile, Naruto was too preoccupied with suppressing the desire to leap across the table and strangle the mutt boy. Kiba had only done it to fit in with the rest of the class, he knew. He could understand that because he had done the same thing for many years. But he'd gone too far. They were not, as you put it, some pitiful clan. They were the Uzumaki family. The Uzumaki were among the first shinobi clans to establish a hidden village. The Senju, one of Konoha's founding clans, are descended from the Uzumaki clan. When Konoha was formed, he sought advice from the Uzumaki. When Uchiha Madara fought Hashirama Senju alongside Kyuubi, only one person stood by the first Hokage's side. Uzumaki Mito, his wife. While Hashirama fought Madara, and Uzumaki accomplished what hundreds of Konoha shinobi could not do 11 years ago. Kyuubi no Yoko was stunned. The Uzumaki clan were unrivaled masters of Fuinjutsu, and their shinobi were rarely matched. The barriers used to defend Konoha are built by Uzumaki seals. We honor the Uzumaki with more than just the swirl on the back of our Chunin vests. The Uzumaki swirl is the swirl in the center of Konoha's leaf symbol. During the Second Shinobi World War, Kumo and Iwa were able to send a force of shinobi around our defenses in a flanking maneuver. Konoha was almost completely undefended, and the overwhelming numbers sent against it would have wiped it out. Our army was unable to return home in time because they were pinned down by the enemy. However, Konoha was allied with Uzushiogakure, the Whirlpool Village, and the Whirlpool Village's rulers were the Uzumaki clan. The Uzumaki rushed to our aid, leaving their own village undefended. They would never make it across the entire length of the Land of Fire in time. Nonetheless, they came. The Uzumaki protect their friends with their lives, and we were among them. They ran for 2 days straight before receiving the devastating news. Konoha was not the only village under attack. The Whirlpool Village, the undefended Whirlpool Village, would be besieged in 3 days. Iruka paused for a moment to catch her breath. What occurred? Did they make a U-turn? Choji inquired. His sluggish companion nodded, emphasizing the question. He, too, was wide awake for this story. Iruka grinned. We all expected them to, and it was still a 2-day journey to Konoha, which would be attacked in a single day. The next day, Konoha was struggling to keep the invaders from breaching the walls. There was a loud crash as the Uzumaki clan collided with the enemy from behind. They were quickly defeated, caught between the Uzumaki's hammer and the anvil of Konoha's walls. At the end of 3 days, the Uzumaki had traversed the entire length of the Land of Fire and fought and won a battle. But they didn't have time to rest. There was not a single Uzumaki in the village. They turned around and started running again as the last man was slain. They'd made the decision to save us, but at the expense of their own village. Such was the Uzumaki's devotion. Kiba felt ashamed to his bones as a result of this. The Inuzuka valued loyalty above all else. Nothing was more important to them than their pack. They also valued loyalty in others. And he had referred to this clan as pathetic. People said it was impossible, Iruka went on. People told them it couldn't be done and that they should give up. However, this was their home, and it had been for generations. The Uzumaki ran home, never stopping to rest, eat, drink, or even clean the blood of their enemies from their bodies. The Uzumaki clan was present when the enemy shinobi arrived to besiege Uzushiogakure 2 days later. And they were prepared. The battle was joined, and the Uzumaki triumphed once more. Such was the Uzumaki's legendary endurance. They put everything on the line to help us, including the lives of their own families and children. They didn't even pause to recover the bodies of their fallen brothers and sisters while defending Konoha. That is why we wear the Uzumaki symbol on our Chunin vests. The classroom was deafeningly quiet. Naruto admired his mother's clan even more now. His clan had done something insane, stupid, and illogical, and he was proud of them for it. But there was something else. But, Iruka-sensei, the Uzumaki symbol is white, he pointed out, pointing to the spiral clan symbol on his shoulder. Everyone's gaze was drawn to it, he could feel it. Many people's eyes widened, including Sasuke's. They thought the symbol was just a pretty decoration Naruto wore for fun. They had never imagined it was a clan symbol. How come the Konoha ninja wear a red symbol? Naruto inquired. Iruka sighed as he entered the battle of the Laughing Scarlet Warriors. Overall, Naruto thought Anko had told the story better, but he did learn a few new things. One was that, while Mist was among those who fought against the Uzumaki, the 7 swordsmen were not among them. The swordsmen had flatly refused to participate in the genocide, going directly against their Kage's orders. Mist and Whirlpool were former allies, and the Uzumaki played a role in the creation of the legendary 7 swords. The first Whirlpool refugees began to arrive at Konoha's gates after the sign in the sky. We were completely unaware of it. Whirlpool had been attacked because they had saved us from certain doom. We did nothing while they were rewarded for their loyalty. Our most important ally was slaughtered almost to the last man in a planned genocide, and we had done nothing to assist them. The Confederacy's plan had been successful. However, there has never been a more costly victory in the elemental nation's history. To commemorate our shame, we wear a red swirl. The Uzumaki clan was not a part of Konoha, but they had done more for us than anyone else, and in their hour of greatest need, we had done nothing. We wear the Uzumaki's red symbol to remember the Scarlet Warriors. Iruka exhaled a sigh. Despite the fact that he was not a shinobi at the time, he, like many others, bore the shame of their inaction. This marked the start of the Third Shinobi World War. Konoha was significantly outnumbered, but not nearly as much as they would have been without the Uzumaki. Those who fought in the war often say that if it hadn't been for their sacrifice, not even the Yellow Flash could have saved us. I, for one, concur. The room fell silent once more. A sleepy voice interrupted it. Iruka-sensei, if the Battle of the Laughing Scarlet Warriors was as difficult as you claim, how come we know so much about it? Iruka gave a nod. Shikamaru, you've asked a good question that can be answered. Seals. I've already stated that the Uzumaki were unrivaled when it came to seals. When they realized they were going to die, Uzumaki Isamu, the clan head of the Uzumaki, sealed all of his memories of the event within a scroll that only those of the Uzumaki bloodline could open. Go. Ojii-sama, Naruto said quietly. His daughter, Iruka added, Kushina Uzumaki opened the scroll and relived the whole thing. It was challenging for her. However, it is the only complete record of the battle that we have and, most likely, the only one that exists. What about the surviving shinobi's battle reports? Sasuke inquired. Iruka shook her head. They were all destroyed. Because the Uzumaki had done so much to them, they were given the harshest punishment possible. Oblivion. There is no record of the battle. Their students are not taught about the battle or the Uzumaki. They are not mentioned in any history book in any land that was a part of the Confederacy. If it did, the name has been obscured. In these countries, the name is not even mentioned. They want nothing more than for the name, Uzumaki, to fade away, as if it never existed at all. Sasuke shivered as he imagined his own clan being subjected to such a thing. He was not going to let it happen. How about your daughter? Ino inquired. Many of the female students in the class nodded. Kushina? Iruka inquired. They agreed with a nod. Iruka exhaled a sigh. The Whirlpool Princess, to be precise. According to what I've heard, she went insane with grief for a while. Who wouldn't want to? She saw each of her family's deaths as if they were happening right in front of her. Isamu is said to have held the hands of nearly every Uzumaki as they died. These were not images or genjutsu, but memories. She recalled the scent of the battlefield. She remembered her family's blood hitting her face, and she remembered feeling her brother's heart stop beating. She recalled. Kushina threw herself at anyone who stood in her way, repeatedly putting herself in suicidal situations. She made her enemies fear her numerous times. Despite her wishes for death, one of two groups was always there to pull her out of it. One had been her best friend since her days at Konoha Academy. The Uchiha clan was the other. Sasuke's brow furrowed like a whip. What? He inquired. Iruka grinned. When Uzumaki Mito fought against the traitorous Madara, the Uchiha and the Uzumaki became allies. During the Second Shinobi World War, the alliance was strengthened. At the time, the majority of Konoha's defenders were Uchiha. A disease had spread throughout the Uchiha compound, forcing many to stay behind for a while to recover. The bonds between them were strengthened once more when the Uzumaki planted the seals within that compound, rendering the disease ineffective. Then there was the fact that Kushina was assigned to the same genin team as a Uchiha named Makoto. My mother, Sasuke said quietly. Naruto's eyes blinked. He had had no idea. Iruka gave a nod. They were the closest of friends. Makoto and Minato Namikaze, it appears, were the ones who helped her overcome her depression. What became of her in the end? Sakura inquired. She stood face to face with the Kyuubi alongside her childhood friend, the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash. It wasn't Iruka who responded. Everyone turned to see Naruto staring at the blackboard, not looking at anyone. He maintained the same soft, calm tone of voice, but it was tinged with just a hint of bitterness. Despite having just given birth to a child, she stood side by side with the Yellow Flash and faced down the strongest of the Biju. Naruto's voice became more bitter. I regard the fourth as my hero and hold him in the highest regard. But isn't it amusing? The Kyuubi has attacked Konoha twice. It has been confronted twice by a Hokage and an Uzumaki. It has been defeated twice. And both times, the Hokage took full credit. Isn't that a kick in the pants? Naruto had heard the story firsthand from Kyuubi. Despite the fact that he had been under Madara's control at the time, he didn't exactly forgive Kyuubi. He realized why he did it. No one wants to be imprisoned for years, but forgiveness takes time. Naruto laughed. Isn't it amusing? For defeating the Kyuubi, the fourth is revered as a hero, while Kushina's name fades from memory. Hinata, who had been sitting next to him, comforted him by touching his arm. Naruto gave Hinata a painful smile as he patted her hand. And yet, he continued abruptly, his gaze fixed on the rest of the class. Their bodies were discovered together, arm in arm, at the site of Kyuubi's defeat. But I won't forget. Naruto pushed his chair away from his desk and walked out the door. This had not been nearly as much fun as he had anticipated. He returned his gaze to one person and felt a pang of regret as he saw the pain in a pair of lavender eyes. Nonetheless, he left. Naruto sat on the edge of the Hokage monument, just above his father's head, watching the sunset behind Konoha. It was so unjust. Sure, he appreciated the fact that his father was well liked in Konoha. He realized that as a dead Kage, he would have been regarded as a far more significant figure than his mother. But they had fought side by side, and it was only by working together that they were able to triumph. He believed that his mother deserved some of the credit as well. Dobi, you are a difficult person to find. Naruto's eyes blinked. He recognized that voice. Sasuke sat next to him, staring out the window with him. So, you're also the last of a clan? He inquired. Naruto laughed angrily. Actually, the last of two clans. My mother also married the heir to another clan. Sasuke's eyes blinked. Which is it? Naruto gave him a silly smile. That is a closely guarded secret. Sasuke grimaced. Defend yourself. Naruto blinks once more. Please excuse me. Fight with me. You come from a powerful clan, and you'd be a worthy test to see how far I'd go to fight. Him. Alright. Naruto said this as he slowly moved into his basic, dreadful academy stance. Sasuke's eyes twinkled. That's not the case, Dobi. I want to go up against the real you. Last week, I saw him take down someone twice his size in 3.5 seconds. Don't be shy. Naruto grinned. Fine. I should have known you weren't going to fall for it. To be fair, I was a little distracted that day. Sasuke returned the smirk. I know. Your girlfriend was not conversing with you. She is not my friend. As he charged in to attack Sasuke, Naruto yelled. Sasuke launched a roundhouse kick at Naruto, unprepared for him to fall to the ground and slide towards him. Naruto's foot shot out and up, attempting to make contact with Sasuke's chin in order to perform a Renden. Sasuke only managed to block the kick, wincing at its power. Naruto spun off the ground, sending the other leg Sasuke's way, which was also blocked. However, the following backhand landed squarely on his jaw. Sasuke's pupils dilated. Naruto had already delivered the first blow in less than a second. Naruto couldn't stop the grin from breaking his features. Sasuke was excellent for an academy student, particularly with his intercepting fist. He wasn't as good as Anko, though. This would be entertaining. Sasuke approached Naruto with caution, delivering a couple of quick jabs. They were all avoided or blocked. The match's pace gradually increased. It made no sense. Naruto was blocking and attacking with every part of his body. Toes, heel, shin, knee, elbows, palm, fists, head, and even his oof were all affected. Shoulder, Sasuke exclaimed. Naruto charged at him, taking the blow to the head in exchange for slamming the point of his shoulder into Sasuke's chest. Naruto performed a 4-step combo up close. He spun close to Sasuke's body and slammed his right elbow into the already injured chest before stomping viciously on Sasuke's foot, forcing him to crouch. This left the back of Sasuke's neck vulnerable to another elbow strike. Sasuke collapsed to the ground, stunned. Naruto drew a kunai from the Uchiha's hair and placed it on his throat. Dead. Sasuke smiled. He was aware of this grip. Naruto hadn't hit the sweet spot at the back of his neck. He had no idea it had been done on purpose. He was aware that he was still in a position to fight. "Don't underestimate me," he exclaimed, still panting. Sasuke arched his entire body and hurled Naruto over his head and away from him, grabbing Naruto's hands with his own. He began making hand signs as soon as his hands left Naruto's skin. Gokyaku no Jutsu, Kaden. It was a slow-moving fireball, and Sasuke was confident Naruto would avoid it. He didn't expect Naruto to narrow his eyes and charge right at him. "Are you mad? Get the hell out of the way." Because of the fireball, Sasuke could no longer see Naruto. It suddenly disintegrated, revealing Naruto leaping headfirst through the flames, a spiraling sphere of crystal blue light naturally resting over his palm, which was thrust out in front of him, leading the way. As Naruto collided with the ground next to him, Sasuke dove to the side. But the blonde had let go of the sphere and spun around, catching the ground with his hand and hitting Sasuke in the face with his heel. From the other hand, the same kunai was thrown at him, nicking the side of his neck. Dead. Sasuke became enraged and grabbed a slew of shuriken, hurling them at Naruto. Naruto bowed almost unnaturally to avoid the spinning stars, unsurprised that Sasuke had them on him despite academy rules. The wires that wrapped around him as Sasuke twitched his fingers also didn't surprise him. He had anticipated it and had considered using a replacement to escape, but that would have been a bad idea. This was crucial for Sasuke. He needed some sort of victory or else he'd go all emo on them all. As he approached Naruto, Sasuke placed the kunai around his neck. "Dead," he stated unequivocally. Naruto growled, yeah. "I wasn't expecting the wires, you understand? Get me out of here. HN. Of all the. Fine Teme. I'll get myself out of here." Sasuke laughed. Observing the heavily trussed up Naruto wiggle around before. "Oh, crap." He collapsed on his face. The scene was amusing until Naruto was able to gather his hands. Poof. In his place, a log appeared. "Praise the log, for it is good," muttered Naruto. "Amen," Sasuke replied flatly. "I'm still going to beat you," Naruto said. "How come you're the dead last?" Sasuke asked, puzzled, wincing at his numerous bruises. For every hit he landed on the blonde, he was hit about 5 times. It pricked his body as well as his pride. Naruto arched a brow at Sasuke. "Sasuke, you really need me to explain it to you. Tell me how they planned team placements. To achieve peak performance by balancing each team." Naruto nodded and translated. "So, what does that mean?" Sasuke's pupils dilated. "It means they put the last man standing and the rookie of the year on the same team. Naruto grinned. Bingo. I'd like to join your team, Sasuke. Together, you and I believe we have the potential to cause significant harm. Nah, just stay out of my way. I will gain the strength I require to avenge my clan. Don't drag me down with you. Naruto snorted and tossed something to Sasuke, who grabbed it from the air instinctively. It was a link in a chain. You are currently a single link. You have nothing that binds you to anything else. A single link is ineffective. However, when you combine those single links, you can create something that is far greater than the sum of its parts. The Uzumaki was aware of this. They stood alongside other links. Your family, the Uchiha, was well aware of this. They were standing next to the Uzumaki. Maybe it's time for them to stand together again. Sasuke just stared at Naruto, then at the link in his hand, then back at Naruto. We both want to strengthen ourselves, but for different reasons. I believe we can help each other and grow stronger than anyone else. Me assisting you, and you assisting me. But I swear to Kami, if you go emo on me, I'll have to beat you up. You don't prepare for the future if you spend too much time dwelling on the past. And in the future, when you face Itachi, I'll be by your side. Sasuke began with the name. And you'll be by my side when I confront the man who murdered both of my parents. Naruto extended his hand in response. Sasuke examined the link first, then the hand, the link, the hand, the link. Sasuke took Naruto's hand and changed the future that would have been with a smirk, no, a smile. Konoha was in uproar by the time Naruto and Sasuke returned to the city, chatting the entire way. Anbu were running around aimlessly, seemingly looking for something or, perhaps, someone. Wow, what's the point of this? Shinigami wondered. Who do you believe they're all looking for? Naruto inquired. I'm not sure, Sasuke replied. Are you sure you haven't done anything? Naruto gradually turned pale. It's not so much about what I've done, Teme, as it is about what they've discovered and what they can prove. He finished his sentence with a nervous laugh. What exactly have you done? Deadpanned Sasuke. Naruto paused and began ticking things off his fingers. Let me see. There's scaring the shit out of the Hyuga clan, painting the Naradeer's noses bright red and shaving the name, Rudolph, into their fur, dosing the Akamichi's food supply with laxatives, replacing the Inuzuka's flea powder with itching powder, swapping the underwear around in the male and female onsen, putting high-grade caffeine in the Nara men's water supply. Super Naruto laughed evilly. I also entered Tora into an underground fighting arena. She's beaten all comers so far and is making me a real killing. I broke into the Anbu department and placed a very strong adhesive to the backs of their masks. You know, their secret identity is very important. Sasuke's eyes were almost ready to fall from his head as the list grew. And grew. What in the world had he gotten himself into? And then there were the Uzumaki, exclaimed an Anbu, catching sight of the day glow orange figure. Naruto became noticeably paler. Oh no, that can't be good. Well, see you later, Sasuke, and just so you know, you're welcome to join Hinata and me after school for some running practice. It can be very useful, like now. A full Anbu squad was charging towards him. You'll never catch me alive, yelled Naruto as he dashed down the road, leaving a small cloud of dust in his wake. Hinata had not gone after Naruto as soon as the academy had closed, as Arlia had suggested. He just needs some alone time, sweetie, and you've got training at home, remember? Her life had changed dramatically since the day she and Arlia met. She was no longer the clan's disgrace, thanks, she believed, in large part to Arlia's assistance. Hinata vividly remembered their conversation when Arlia first appeared to her. Flashback. Hello, Hinata. I am someone who hopes to be your friend. At this point, you could call me a spirit, as I am not up to my usual strength. But as to who I am the goddess of love and matrimony, wife of the Shinigami, lord of the dead, and daughter to Kami, who really doesn't need any introduction. But you? You can call me Arlia. Hinata slowly nodded her head. Oh, she exclaimed. Hinata simply looked her over. Do you want some tea? Arlia was taken aback by Hinata's reaction. Is that it? No fainting, no gasps of surprise, nothing but, would you like some tea? Hinata shook her head. I've had a very strange day today, she admitted, apologizing. Right now, I think I'd believe almost anything. Arlia slapped her on the brow with her palm. Stupid blonde, she grumbled. You completely ruined my entrance. So, do you want some? Hinata inquired. Thank you, Arlia said, sighing. They were both sitting on Hinata's bed, drinking a lovely cup of green tea, 5 minutes later. Arlia's eyes lit up with delight after the first bite. Hinata was extremely knowledgeable about the culinary arts. Hinata stuttered, Anyo. The absurdity of her situation, sitting next to a goddess and drinking a cup of tea, was beginning to penetrate her mental haze. May I inquire as to why you are here, Arlia-sama? Arlia sighed gratefully as she set her cup down. That's good stuff. Hinata, you may inquire. For a few seconds, the room was silent. You haven't asked yet, Arlia gently reminded. It may appear petty, but Hinata needed to learn how to ask for things up front in order to overcome her shyness. Gomen, what brings you here? There's no need to apologize, Hinata. As for why I'm here, well, it's mostly due to the actions of two people, Arlia explained cryptically. Hinata smirked. Who? Arlia grinned. My husband, Shinigami, and Naruto, she says. As Hinata heard her crush's name, a crack appeared in the cup she was holding. What did he do, Naruto? Something rather stupid, actually, Arlia explained as she lifted her cup to her lips for another sip of tea. She sighed merrily. However, there is something admirable about it. What did he do? Hinata inquired once more. That did sound eerily similar to Naruto-kun. You do realize Naruto is a very special person, right? Arlia asked, seemingly ignoring Hinata's question. Hinata nodded her head, slightly irritably. Of course she knew Naruto-kun was unique. Arlia grinned. The thing is, you have no idea how special he is. To cut a long story short, he did something to catch my husband's attention. Hinata's cup shattered in her grasp. Hinata dashed towards the door, oblivious to the deep cuts in her hands. If Naruto had piqued Shinigami's interest. Arlia caught her by the back of her jacket, demonstrating remarkably quick reflexes. Whoa there, honey. Don't worry, your little lover boy is fine, Arlia said, and Hinata flushed bright red. Arlia clucked her tongue in disgust at Hinata's hands. She took them in her hands and started rubbing them, the cuts healing quickly under her gentle fingers. In fact, he's doing just fine. He and Gami-kun get along like two best friends. Yes, thick as thieves, those two. A slightly disapproving tone entered her voice as she remembered times when the two males got a little too rowdy. Look, the bottom line is that my husband is staying with Naruto for a while, preparing him for what's coming for him. Hinata's eyes blinked. Even in her current state, this was becoming a little too far-fetched for her to accept. But then, why are you here? She inquired once more. Was it you who made my clan act nice? Arlia inquired, her brow furrowed. Hinata nodded, slightly embarrassed. Yes, that word would suffice. No, Arlia stated flatly. You were correct in your first guess. Naruto did it. He's such a sweetie, isn't he? Arlia sighed dramatically and longingly. Hinata let out a soft growl in her throat. Arlia blinked before returning her gaze to Hinata, who was wearing a serious expression in her eyes. An expression that seemed to scream, "Mine." Arlia grinned. The girl was full of life. It was deep underground, but it was there. Ah. Don't look at me like that, honey, I'm a married woman, and besides, I'll be helping you get stronger, build up your confidence, and the like for a while. Hinata smirked slightly. Greetings, Arlia-sama. Just Arlia, hun, the goddess interjected. Arigato. Arlia, but why would you assist me? Arlia smiled, her arms spread wide. Remember, I'm the goddess of love? You piqued my interest, so I'm going to assist you. Besides, all good heroes, like Naruto-kun, require a damsel, and it appears to me that you'll fit the bill perfectly. Hinata had had a particularly emotional day. She had admitted to caring for Naruto, she had decided to defy her clan's rules at any cost, she had been convinced that she would be banished, she had had her entire clan kneel before her and beg forgiveness, including her father. She had met the goddess of love and had tea with her. It wasn't until the goddess's final words that she passed out in a cold sweat. End of flashback. Arlia, on the other hand, didn't think she had much to do with it. The most she had done was act as a voice in her head, combating the negative thoughts that plagued her. She had simply given Hinata the praise she deserved and needed, and the child was blossoming under her tender care. Arlia was also someone Hinata could talk to about anything and everything. Sometimes the discussions were quite amusing, and sometimes they were quite embarrassing. Many of the conversations revolved around Naruto. Hinata had never had anyone to confide in about her crush. Hinata had never had anyone to talk to about anything for the longest time. Hinata, on the other hand, could do without Arlia's observations. Did you hear that, Hinata? Legendary endurance and stamina. Ooh, you go girl, you sure know how to pick them. Despite being a goddess of love, Hinata had discovered that Arlia could be quite, dare she say, perverted at times. Of course, that wasn't Arlia's only transgression. She had also done a lot to assist Hinata with her taijutsu. Flashback. Take a look, honey, Arlia said sweetly. You're not exactly built for the traditional gentle fist. Most practitioners are very rigid in their movements. You, on the other hand, are very flexible. Use that flexibility to move around, dart in, bend out of the way, or get a strike in. Arlia had taken Hinata to a mindscape, and Hinata had been surprised to discover that she had one. The majority of it was initially dark, with one small bright spot. Naruto and her mother were both there, or at least her memories of them were. However, with Arlia's assistance, a field with a bright blue sky and a small area designated as a training ground had been created. The sky was filled with a gentle light from a lavender-colored sun. When Hinata was here, she always felt at ease. Of course, the gentle fist was not the only taijutsu they practiced in her mindscape. Arlia was also teaching Hinata 2 other types of taijutsu at the time. The gentle way, which Hinata found difficult, focused on using your opponent's own speed and power against them to throw or grapple with them. Although striking with both hands and feet was included in this style, it was unlike anything Hinata had ever done before. However, due to her quickness and lightness on her feet, no one would have expected her to be capable of it. The second step was to learn the fundamentals of snake style and incorporate them into her gentle fist. When Hinata was told how many males would find the flexibility required to perform the snake style appealing, she blushed bright red and got to work on it with twice the zeal. Finish the flashback. Arlia would draw her into her mindscape at least once or twice a day, usually while she was sitting in a clan meeting, and practice with her. Hinata had just handily defeated Hanabi in a match. It had begun as it always did, with Hanabi pushing Hinata back. Flashback. The proctor yelled, "Hajime!" Hanabi dashed towards Hinata, her hands striking her like snakes, Byakugan blazing. Hinata deflected the first, second, and third strikes. But no matter how many strikes she avoided by using methods other than gentle fist, she couldn't bring herself to hit her younger sister. Good girl Hinata. Bend. Bend. That's it. As my husband says, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Sting, sting. Stiiiiing. Arlia frowned within Hinata's mindscape. Dear, you do realize that in order to win a fight, you must actually hit back, don't you? But it's Hanabi. I don't want to hurt my little sister. Arlia's brow furrowed. So. That was the explanation. Arlia could understand Hinata's viewpoint. In some cases, she might even applaud it. But, judging by the arrogance that seemed to wash over the younger girl in large waves, Hanabi needed some tough love right now. And Hinata was the one who had to give it to her. Come on, honey, you don't have to hurt her, just put her in a situation she can't get out of. Hinata remained silent as she deflected another of her sister's quick blows. Hanabi snarled in rage, temporarily forgetting her usual Hyuga demeanor as she failed to hit her sister yet again. The worst part was Hinata's slightly glazed expression, almost as if she wasn't paying her complete attention. This was mostly because Hinata wasn't completely focused on Hanabi. Arlia was standing in the way of her doing so. If Hinata had given her full attention to the fight, she would have started to lose confidence in herself, she would have started riding herself down, and she would have lost. Hinata was acting instinctively at the time. Does your sister have more power than you? Hinata drew in on herself slightly, agreeing with that last statement without saying anything. Oh. In that case, perhaps it would be better for Naruto if Hanabi was his damsel. After all, she needs to be able to protect herself. Mine. Hinata mentally exclaimed. Arlia smiled. How about this? Get in close, take her down, and I'll teach you some Naruto taming techniques. Hiyashi had been taken aback by the fight's outcome thus far, if you can call it that. Hinata had not yet made a single strike against Hanabi, but Hanabi had not been able to make a single strike on Hinata. Hinata, on the other hand, seemed to be conversing with herself the entire time. Suddenly, the glazed look in her eyes vanished, replaced by intense concentration and a large blush. Hinata raised her hand in a circular motion, deflecting Hanabi's final strike to the side. She stepped in close at the same time, grabbing the younger girl's arm and sweeping one foot behind Hanabi's legs, causing her to be thrown into the air. Hanabi let out a high-pitched yelp as her feet left the ground, followed by a lower grunt as she collided with the hard floor. Hinata twisted her sister's arm after placing her foot in the small of Hanabi's back and pinning her to the ground. Hinata leaned down and formed a dagger hand at the back of Hanabi's head, demonstrating that she could easily turn Hanabi's brain into jelly if she so desired. The match was called in Hinata's favor by the proctor. End of flashback. Hinata still believed she had been fortunate. She had only practiced the Osoto Gari enough to be confident in using it in a fight, and she had been given the perfect opportunity to do so. Arlia, on the other hand, claimed that she was the one who saw the opportunity, and that the fact that she had done the throw perfectly after only 2 days of practice was beyond impressive. When asked where she learned such a throw, Hinata stammered out that it was taught to her by a friend at the academy. In some ways, it was correct. Arlia had taught her the move at the academy, so it wasn't entirely false. Hinata wondered what had gotten her father so worked up. He had taken the time to ask her about her day at the academy, something he would never have done before Naruto did. Whatever he did, Hinata had never asked about it, just as she had never asked why her father and the elders had cut their hair. It appeared to be a sensitive subject. What surprised her was his reaction when Hinata mentioned the history lesson that Iruka had mentioned. He was taken aback, but he seemed to enjoy the story as much as she did. "Was this your first encounter with the Uzumaki clan?" Hiashi had inquired sternly. Hinata stuttered, "Hi, to-san." Hiashi frowned darkly, muttering something about the elders under his breath that, judging by his tone, was not complimentary. His expression darkened, as did his words. "Your mother was close friends with Uzumaki Kushina, one of the last Uzumakis, and she hoped that Kushina would be the one to free the caged bird seal from the branch house, reuniting the Hyuga clan. Is that possible, to-san?" Hinata asked, her eyes widening. She inquired, her voice tinged with hope. "For one of our seal masters?" Snorted Hiashi. "Unlikely. A curse seal is far more difficult to remove than it is to apply. But what about an Uzumaki skilled in their clan's sealing arts? It would be well within their realm of possibility." "To-san, Anyo?" Hiashi looked down at his fearful daughter. "Hi? We learned a lot about Uzumaki Kushina-sama as well." Oh, Hiashi decided to entertain her and listen to what she had to say. It had been so long since he had had an actual conversation with his eldest daughter that it was surprising how much he was actually enjoying it. And so, Hinata did, how the Whirlpool Princess had gone insane with grief, how she had witnessed the deaths of every single one of her family, how she had gained a reputation among all those nations she had fought against, how the Uchiha had become her ally in this, her most trying time. All of this, Hiashi knew. She described how Kushina fought the Kyuubi alongside Minato, her childhood friend, despite having just given birth to a child, and how both the Fourth's and Kushina's bodies were discovered together, arm in arm, at the site of Kyuubi's defeat. "How did you find out about this?" Hiashi said quietly. "At the academy, to-san," Hinata blinked. Hiashi cut his hand through the air in an impatient gesture, causing Hinata to flinch, but he continued. "I know you learned it at the academy, but who told you?" "Is that Iruka?" he insisted. "And no, Iruka didn't seem to be aware of this," Hinata said, shaking her head. This was revealed to the class by Naruto-kun. Hiashi sat back in his chair, his mind racing with questions. How had the boy known this? Where had he learned it? Why hadn't the clan heads been informed? Did this mean Anyo, to-san, but was Kushina-sama Naruto mother? Kun's his daughter interrupted his train of thought. Haishi's mind went blank as these words seemed to reverberate inside his skull. However, before he could fully process this question, an Anbu appeared in his office, escorted by one of the branch family. Security had been overhauled following the Yurei incident. "Excuse me, Hiashi-sama, but your presence at the council is required." That was 2 hours ago, and Hinata was now walking the streets, looking for Naruto when an orange blur rushed past her, closely followed by an Anbu squad. Blur exclaimed without pausing. "That boy really needs a new hobby," Arlia sighed. Hinata agreed and turned to follow the sound of the manic laughter. The young blonde boy had impressed one of the Anbu who was chasing him. He had been running flat out for a good 5 to 10 minutes at a speed at which they couldn't catch him, but they had been slowly gaining on him for a while now, and it wouldn't be long before they caught him. The other two Anbu, on the other hand, had chased Naruto before, and they could guess at the thoughts that were even now running. Poor fool, they thought. They knew the blonde. Naruto was devilishly fast when he wanted to be, had a slightly sadistic attitude when it came to escaping pursuit, and knew Konoha's streets like only someone who had lived on them could. A cart suddenly pulled out from a side alley directly in front of Naruto. Without even slowing down, Naruto slammed his right foot down on the ground and pushed up, twisting his body enough to do a handless cartwheel up and over the cart. Hitting the ground again, he continued running, not losing any momentum. The rookie following him blinked and spoke to his companion, "Did he just?" "Yep," the other two said together. "Above the..." "Yep. But he's only a..." "We're aware. Shut up and leave." Shinigami had taught Naruto about this style of running, which was a combination of parkour and free running. Parkour was basically a way of running as the crow flies, overcoming any obstacle in the most efficient way possible. Free running was all of that, but with a whole lot of tricks thrown in. Speaking of said Anbu, one of them appeared right in front of him, legs spread and arms wide open, preventing Naruto from fleeing. Naruto almost rolled his eyes as he hit the ground at full speed in a slide that took him right between the surprised shinobi's legs. Ladies and gentlemen, code orange, code orange, code orange. Requesting assistance and possibly some tranquilizers? Backup is on its way. Request for tranquilizers denied. Once more. Then could you call my wife and tell her that I'm going to be a little late back home? Sighed the wolf Anbu. Can do.
This is starting to get a little tense, Naruto said to himself, as the Anbu running behind him was too puffed to respond, with a large amount of anime tears streaming down his face. In his defense, Naruto had started throwing some of the stuff he had kept in his school backpack over his shoulders to discourage pursuers from getting too close, and he still fondly remembered the dictionary that had smacked square into that bird Anbu's face.
His current pursuer had gotten a face full of chili powder, which Naruto regretted letting go of because it was high-quality stuff, worthy of being used to make the curry of death. He had planned on mixing it with Mizuki's coffee.
Sigh. Mizuki had become the target for a rather large number of pranks that Naruto pulled.
He still didn't like the bastard, but who was he kidding? Shinigami and Naruto both blinked at the thought, but the fox was overjoyed for the young kid.
You've spent far too much time with Anko.
You know what, I think I might agree with you.
Can I use the tree walking technique now?
You've kept them off you for over an hour, running in plain sight, Shinigami shrugged. Sure, why not? Thanks. Naruto grinned and immediately made a sharp turn into a crowded street. Realistically, there was no way he could make it through with any kind of speed, but that didn't stop him from charging into the crowd with extreme prejudice. Almost immediately after, Naruto used his smaller size to his advantage and reached a wall, where he ran horizontally along the wall as if he'd been doing it for years, over the crowd's heads, and off into another street, leaving the lizard-masked ninja speechless, too surrounded by people to jump to the wall and do the same for fear of knocking them down. Lizard reached for his radio, exhaling an explosive breath. Be advised, subject is well versed in and capable of performing the tree walking technique.
What the hell happened?
You're saying he can now run up walls as well? If he wasn't mistaken, came the voice of an enraged female Anbu, Yugo. Yes. Lizard growled, we no longer have that advantage over him.
Several vulgar swear words were uttered by Anbu, who had previously had the misfortune of having to chase Naruto. They were not said over the radio, of course, because the Anbu have standards to uphold, but that did not make them any less heartfelt.
Alright. Everyone who thinks we don't get paid enough for this, say I, Wolf grumbled over the headsets. I. Lizard turned off the radio because hearing about how one kid learning a basic technique had so many Anbu thinking such traitorous thoughts was slightly demoralizing, but he privately agreed with them. Naruto had now taken to the roofs to avoid those searching for him, as the Anbu were becoming increasingly enraged and thus more difficult to avoid, and had even begun using several low-grade jutsu to try and catch him after the nets proved completely useless. Sigh, the log was good. These jutsu included some kind of sticky substance that was spat onto the floor in front of him. Fortunately, he had managed to go over it with a chakra-fueled jump, surprising the Anbu. However, the syrupy substance proved useful the next time he came down that alley. As far as Naruto was aware, that hawk Anbu was still stuck in it face first on the ground. Naruto was pretty sure he had also seen a miniature swamp of the underworld, which he had enjoyed skidding across with a handy plank of wood. But now, he should probably get to Gigi's office and give the poor masked ninja a break. But first, he should probably lose this last batch of pursuers. Subject is on the rooftops, heading north-northeast in Sector 12. We're almost there, one of the three Anbu behind him yelled. Take him out, take him out. It had been almost 3 hours since the chase began, said the slightly hysterical voice on the radio. Naruto turned around, a large fox-like grin on his features, and said, "See ya." He said, vaulting over the low wall and off the roof. Stay with him. All three Anbu immediately jumped off the roof and fell to the ground. Naruto was nowhere to be seen. Looking back, they saw Naruto hop up from the windowsill he had been clinging on, back on top of the roof, and start running in the opposite direction. The rookie standing next to Wolf choked back his sobs of frustration. This is Wolf, the Anbu reported tiredly. Please be advised, the subject has eluded capture. His next words were slightly optimistic, requesting the use of lethal force? I hope you're kidding, Wolf, said the disapproving voice from headquarters. Mostly, sir, Wolf grumbled. Mostly. A hysterical voice interrupted the conversation, saying, Hey. I can see him. The brat has moved on to the Hokage Tower. All units, I mean all of you. Onward to the tower. Now. Naruto grinned, enjoying the slight burning of his muscles and the way he had to gasp every now and then to catch his breath. Naruto's endurance had become even more ridiculous since Shinigami had repaired his seal, and it took a lot to get him to feel physically tired. Now, he only had a couple more blocks to go before he reached Gigi. It would be good to see him after so long. Oh, crap, Naruto muttered softly, his path to the Hokage Tower blocked by 4 lines of sweaty, annoyed, purposeful Anbu. And they'd spotted him. Naruto gulped. They didn't look happy, but he swears he saw the glint of the sun smiling off several wide grins directed at him, visible even through the tiny gap in their masks. Naruto gulped and looked around wildly for a moment before settling on a long pole laying against the side of the building. Every Anbu took a single step forward, only about 12 meters between them and their elusive target. Naruto slowly grasped the pole and lifted it off the ground. Do you think we could talk about this? He inquired, a little nervously. When several Anbu looked at each other and said, Screw not showing emotion, they burst out laughing. Oh well. Only one thing left to do, Naruto sighed, placing the pole against his shoulder so that it was horizontal to the ground. Free ramen. Naruto charged, yelling at the top of his lungs, and the Anbu did the same. Just before the two collided, Naruto stabbed the wind-sharpened end of the pole into the ground and lifted himself up and over in a perfect pole vault. At the apex of his flight, he twisted his body around, standing on the very tip of the vertical pole and leapt, using all his strength and as much chakra as possible. Meanwhile, people in the Hokage's office were growing impatient. Danzo seemed to be waving his cane around for emphasis as he spoke to Hiruzen. In reality, he was attempting to remove it from his palm without anyone noticing. He was looking forward to finding out who had superglued the end of it. Hiruzen, we've all been waiting for the Uzumaki child to arrive for over 3 hours now. Why is so much of the council's time being squandered? Hiruzen pondered whether or not his former teammate could accidentally fall out of a window or have a heart attack in his sleep. Most likely not. I apologize to the Honorable Council, the third joked. Even as we speak, my Anbu is out looking for Naruto. I'm sure it'll only be a matter of time before he arrives. Naruto flew through the open window as soon as Hiruzen finished speaking, his body horizontal to the floor. He rolled to the ground and awoke with a vulpine grin on his face, facing the third Hokage. Gigi! He exclaimed loudly and joyfully before leaping at the third in a move resembling a flying tackle. Gigi, I haven't seen you in ages. Naruto said loudly as he wrapped his arms around him tightly, his face buried in the Hokage robes so no one could see his tears. What have you been up to? How are you doing? What's the deal with you turning purple? Are you ill? Sarutobi was finally able to pry Naruto's arms free from around his neck, inhaling a large gulp of life-giving oxygen. Sorry about that, Gigi. I'm doing much better than I was the last time I saw you, and I've even made a few new friends. In fact, I had just made a new friend when all of these strange OS in masks tried to apprehend me. I was too fast for them, but there were a lot of them. Gigi, don't let the creepy masked men get you. Naruto continued to speak in rapid succession. Ahem. Yelled a loud voice, drawing Naruto's attention. When he turned around, he saw that Danzo was the one who had coughed. Behind him was the entire Konoha Shinobi and Civilian Council, all of whom were fixed on Naruto. Naruto did a deadpan. Riita, I can see that I've arrived at a bad time. Bye. So saying, the blonde jumped out the window once more. Into the vengeful Anbu's waiting arms below. Aauuuggghhh. Guys, please be reasonable. It was all a joke. Ow. That hurt, MOTHERF. You don't have the right to be a jerk just because you were picked on in the academy. Several people began to shuffle or turn slowly red as Naruto's ranting continued to float through the open window. I have rights, you know. I am entitled to an attorney. What about my last phone call? I need a lawyer. Are you resisting arrest? Are you kidding me? I believed you had to be fit to be in the Anbu. Perhaps you should cut back on the dango. Do you want arrest for resistance? Do not force me to kick your ass. I tell you, I did not do it. In any case, he had it coming. You masked pedophiles, let me go. Do any of you know who Orochimaru is? Handcuffs? Kinky. What on earth is that rubber glove for? No, I will not apply for the position. You get the position. Outside, there was a loud, high-pitched yelp of pain. Suck on that, you bitch son. I will not have another cavity search. Awful Anbu. Dango is not for you.
Damn it. I pay your salary.
Many of the people in the audience were shocked by the swear words that followed. You bastards, let me go. And get those guts out, or you'll never catch me. Iruka, who was sitting in the middle of the room on a foldable chair, nervously rubbed the back of his head. Come on, guys, what's a good bribe worth around here? Ow? What in the world are you doing, man? I'm going to MMPPHMMYMDM when I get out of here. Not long after, 5 different Anbu dragged Naruto back into the Hokage office. He was bound with rope, his hands were tied together at the wrists, and his ankles were hobbled. Not to mention the gag that was tightly tied around his mouth. Subject: Uzumaki Naruto has been brought before the council, Honorable Hokage, the Anbu Wolf's haggard voice said. Yes, Wolf, I see you. Thank you very much. But, may I ask, why did you tie him up so tightly? The third inquired, perplexed. Wolf-san, you're right. Why are you being so cruel to me? Naruto abruptly hung from the ANBU's arm, the ropes, handcuffs, and gag all neatly piled behind him. Shinigami chuckled. Nice one, kid, I knew you would have enjoyed learning from Houdini. Shinigami would occasionally bring one of the dead to teach Naruto about their craft. Naruto had learned a lot from the famous escape artist, including how to pick locks he never knew existed. He still had a lot of trouble with locks that had seals built into them, such as those in the Hyuga compound. There was no sign or signal. All of the Anbu in the room simply jumped on top of Naruto, forming a massive dogpile. In the middle of the crowd, there were some flashing fists, as well as ninja wire, handcuffs, and sealing equipment. There were a few under-the-breath swear words and an interruption when one of the ANBUs had to pry Naruto's teeth from another's arm. Naruto was now tied in twice as much ninja wire as he was rope, his hands were cuffed together behind his back, his feet were also handcuffed together, he was connected to a ball and chain, and he was wearing some kind of face mask, muzzle. He also had several seals painted on his body. In contrast, one of the Anbu was handcuffed to the ankle of another. Another was wearing a clown mask, a fourth was missing his Chunin flak jacket, and the last was dressed in a pink replica of Guy's spandex suit. The last one made Naruto sigh. He was ecstatic about his new henge abilities. Subject: Secure, Lord Hokage, Wolf said again, cautiously looking around for his flak vest. Why did it take so long to bring the civilian noticed Sarutobi's glare. Uzumaki in front of the council? The tangled Naruto blinked, then looked around at the Anbu. No one could understand what he was saying because of the muzzle and seals, but his inflection was clear. He wasn't happy with the Anbu right now. What did he say? Inoichi inquired. I said, none of the Anbu ever told me I was wanted in front of the council, Naruto said as he emerged from the shadows. The people in the room blinked, their gaze shifting from one Naruto to the one on the floor in front of them. From one to the other. The other burst into flames, leaving a log in its wake. And the log said, Naruto quoted, "Fear not to use me, for I am thy protector." Amen, the rest of the shinobi said instinctively. Oh, Anbu-san, Naruto said, holding up 5 different leather rectangles. You must have dropped these, he explained as he returned their wallets. Hello, Wolf. What purpose does a condom serve for a married man? The Anbu blinked, then opened their wallets and counted their money. When they looked up, Naruto was counting what was missing. Finder's fee, he remarked casually. Both Kyuubi and Shinigami were laughing their heads off inside his seal at the Anbu in front of them's dumbfounded body language. The Anbu exchanged glances before slowly nodding in agreement. Lord Hokage, Lizard said, attempting to avoid looking at the rookie in the pink thing. We, the Anbu, would like to speak with you after this meeting. Sarutobi simply nodded. That's all right. The Anbu marched out of the room, stiff-backed. Bye, Anbu-san, Naruto said, waving. Alright, we'll play again another day. Someone outside cried out in pain. Naruto swept around in a courtly bow as soon as the door closed. Honorable Council, Lord Hokage. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. What can I do to help you? He said it politely and maturely. Several council members collapsed in anime style as a result of the boy's complete emotional turnaround. You could start by explaining why you didn't show up when summoned, Demo Uzumaki. An unimportant civilian council member yelled angrily. Naruto shook his head. I assumed they had discovered. Mistakenly accused me of a prank that I had not committed. You'd be surprised how often that has occurred. 128, Sarutobi deadpanned, his gaze fixed on a note on his desk. Naruto shook his head dismissively. Details, details, details. They were never able to prove anything. Then why didn't you simply declare your innocence? Danzo inquired, approaching him until their faces were only inches apart. Naruto's pupils constricted slightly as he gazed at the cripple. Shinigami had revealed a great deal about the man in front of him.
He was the man who wanted him for nothing more than a weapon.
He was the leader of Root and one of the masterminds behind the Uchiha massacre. But the worst thing he'd done was steal many Uchiha's Sharingan eyes and use Shisui's eye on Naruto and his friends. He'd had to watch Hinata die because of this man in front of him. His mind raced through all the different ways he could kill the man in front of him right now. Danzo was unprepared, relaxed, and arrogant. It would be simple. So simple. His chin was already bowed. Danzo's jaw would hit the ground at an oblique angle with all of his and Naruto's weight behind the blow if Naruto grabbed him by the back of his head and fell to the floor. His jaw would shatter, leaving him completely open to the next Rasengan to the head. It wouldn't be pretty, but it would be deadly. Maybe a Kaisken across his throat would suffice. Perhaps he should draw his kunai and stab it up through the soft skin beneath his jaw. No, that wouldn't work. Danzo would be gone as soon as he drew the knife. At the moment, Naruto preferred the fist to the temple, followed by a kunai through the eye when he was down. In some ways, it would be appropriate. Kid. Shinigami's voice broke through Naruto's bloody thoughts, causing him to pause slightly. You can assassinate the old man later. Not now, when there are so many witnesses. Put your thinking cap on. Naruto softly chuckled, mentally thanking Shinigami. He was actually a little afraid of himself right now. The reason for this was that he was almost certain he could pull it off. Danzo had no reason to suspect him, and being forewarned was the only way he could prevent the attack. He stood in the middle of a room full of high-class ninja, coldly and logically plotting the death of one of them. He was no longer the oblivious dead last he once was. Naruto retreated behind his idiocy mask and responded to Danzo's question. It's simple, he said, smiling. They weren't all Anbu, though. Others were mixed in with the rest of them as well. Danzo remained motionless. Surely, this kid couldn't tell the difference between regular Anbu and his elite. I think one of them called themselves Root, Naruto pondered. Danzo went completely still. You could tell them apart because their breath smelled like shit. Most likely as a result of spending too much time kissing ass. Naruto went on. Naruto. Iruka hissed, surprised that his student would act so casually in this situation. Oh. Hello there, Iruka-sensei. How are things going? Naruto smiled broadly as he waved to the scar-faced Chunin. Sarutobi snorted, unable to stop himself from laughing at his former teammate. That should keep him quiet for the time being. I have a question for Uzumaki-san, Naruto said, turning to face the Hyuga clan's unactivated Byakugan of Hiashi. Yes, Hyuga-sama, Naruto inquired, his face innocent but secretly cursing. He had forgotten to provide the Hyuga with the remedy for the mark he had placed on their throats. Could you tell me anything about a man named Yurei? Naruto nearly smirked. Almost. This would be the first time he used some of Shinigami's very specific training. Flashback. Look, kid, there will be times in your life when you will have to lie. And do so convincingly. Typically, to a woman, Shinigami's tone of voice was solemn. I wonder if Arlia is aware of this. Kyuubi pondered. I'll deny everything. When you and that little Hyuga girl get married, Naruto began to sputter uncontrollably at this point. Sometimes she'll ask you questions that you don't want to answer honestly. That Byakugan gives her an even greater advantage than usual, but if I can lie through my teeth to Arlia, you're going to learn how to lie without getting caught. End of flashback. Naruto didn't want Hinata's father to know about his connection to Yurei, but he did want to keep him guessing. He wouldn't be able to make too many connections this way. Hyuga-sama, no. I'm afraid I've never met Yurei before. What is his name? He sounds terrifying. I'm not a fan of ghosts. They frighten me. Hiashi exhaled a sigh. The boy had never lied to him. He needed more information on the man who had demonstrated his ability to kill them all. Uzumaki appeared to be a foregone conclusion. Uzumaki-san, I understand. Thank you very much. He sat down again, whispering quietly but not quietly enough for Naruto's enhanced hearing. They frighten me as well. Naruto couldn't help but grin. Troublesome, can we get to the point of this meeting? Nara Shikaku inquired. Quite, Homura concurred. Uzumaki, we've called you here to ask you a few questions. Many members of the council nodded. We've come to talk about the last lesson that was taught in the academy classrooms, Kaharu said sternly. Iruka perspired. He had no idea that discussing the Uzumaki was frowned upon by the council, or at least the civilian half of it. Naruto cheerfully nodded. So, you're giving Iruka a raise or something? It's really unfortunate that so many of today's youth are unaware of such significant events in Konoha's history. Perhaps those lessons should be included in the curriculum? Keep quiet, demon spawn. We're already unpopular with the other nations for retaining that bloody red swirl of that wretched clan. Naruto was enraged by a rather stupid civilian. Now that our children are aware of it, it will be even more difficult for that name to vanish. Said civilian became the target of a great deal of attention, as well as a small amount of killing intent. Yet, said ki came from almost every single shinobi in the room. Naruto himself was barely able to keep his own killing intent from joining the others. So, is that your plan? He spoke softly, allowing his words to reach everyone in the room. It was the parents' responsibility to tell the story of the Uzumaki clan so that each family could honor them in their own way. Shinobi rarely speak of it, for their shame in failing the Uzumaki burns continues to this day. You, on the other hand, would let the world forget about them, about their sacrifice, in order to curry favor with other nations. Should I remind you that Konoha would not be alive today to suck up to those around them if it weren't for the Uzumaki? Naruto's voice was cold and enraged. We were told that the history of the Uzumaki would be explained as part of the academy curriculum, Sume said quietly, glaring at the civilian. He had felt more ki from his wife, the civilian sneered. This was due to the fact that the shinobi in the room were all limiting their ki output in order to respect their position in the Hokage's office. As a result, the civilian may be forgiven for his next stupid act. What do we care about a defunct clan? We're still alive, and if erasing their name helps our relations with the other villages, I'd do it myself. The killing intent in the room had reached monstrous proportions, and Naruto couldn't help but add his own to the mix. The civilian target in question could almost feel the hungry gaze of a swarm of beasts as they shifted through the wind around him. He could feel their lust for his blood, for his death, and as their forms shifted from shape to shape, he could almost feel them charging. The civilian fainted dead away after losing control of his bowels in a rather spectacular manner, falling to a stinky heap on the ground. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked disgusted at the mess on the ground, and he wasn't talking about the puddle that was forming. He activated his intercom system by pressing the button. Could you please send Ibiki to the office and tell him that I have a patient I'd like him to look at? He then turned to face the other members of the civilian council. Is this true? He demanded sternly. None of the civilians were able to meet his gaze. Iruka! Yelled Sarutobi. Iruka sat up straight. Yes, Lord Hokage? He inquired cautiously. Is it clear that the history of the Uzumaki clan is now a required subject for the academy curriculum? The tone of Sarutobi left no room for debate. Nonetheless, some of the civilians began to speak up, only to be silenced when the professor gave them the eyeball. Indeed, Lord Hokage. Iruka responded, his voice clear. Yay, Naruto exclaimed. There are still some other matters to be discussed. Sakura's mother, Sakura Haruno, interrupted Naruto's celebration. For example, how would a Chunin know an A-class secret like the fact that Uzumaki Kushina was present at the defeat of the Kyuubi? Actually, Shuza cut in. A different story was told to me by Choji. He claimed Naruto was the one who knew that part of the story. Everyone's attention was drawn to Naruto, who was opening a packet of instant ramen. What? I haven't eaten anything since breakfast. How did you know Kushina was going to be there that night? Naruto winced as Sakura screeched, apparently a family trait. But, my ramen, Naruto sobbed, causing the council to perspire. Naruto, Iruka cut in. Put the ramen down. Answer the nice lady's question, and after this is all over, I'll take you to Ichiraku's. The instant ramen, which had somehow become contaminated with boiling water, was hurled out the office window. Ignoring the howl of pain from outside, Naruto focused entirely on Sakura. Could you please repeat the question, Haruno-san? She was curious as to how you knew Kushina had been with the Yondaime when he defeated the Kyuubi. Naruto shook his head. There was a file on Mom in the ANBU's headquarters. It revealed her final resting place. How did you discover Kushina was your mother? Kaharu screamed. Naruto grinned. No, I didn't. You just informed me. Hiruzen glared at his teammate, while the rest of the council looked at Naruto with fresh eyes. They were unaware that Kushina was Naruto's mother. But, in retrospect, it was so obvious. They acted almost identically. But who was his father if Kushina was his mother? What were you doing looking through Anbu files, Naruto? Intruding on the council members' thoughts, the third inquired. Naruto flushed. Oh, no. I didn't mean to say that. A friend challenged me to play a practical joke on someone in the Anbu. There was a wager. Can you demonstrate that you were in the ANBU's headquarters? Danzo inquired, suspecting that he had obtained the information from a more furry source. He was correct, but Naruto did not want him to know. Yisa, could I borrow you for a moment, Ibiki-sama? Ibiki, startled, emerged from the shadows, where he had been removing a number of noodles. Not bad, kid, he said. How did you know I was here? Naruto shook his head. You have a distinct scent of blood, tears, sweat, shame, and fear, none of which is yours. As well as noodles for some reason. Ibiki gave a nod. Yeah, I was walking towards the building when a boiling cup of instant ramen hit me. Naruto gave a sympathetic nod. Ibiki-sama, I'm sorry to hear that. Shinigami and Kyuubi had both told him that it was a good idea to be on the good side of torture experts. If that meant showing them a little bit of respect, Naruto didn't mind. It was her fault, Naruto pointed out to Sakura. She didn't want me to eat while she was questioning me. Ibiki fixed her gaze on the sputtering pink-haired woman. So, what were you looking for in me? Naruto stood up slowly. The council here wants me to prove that I broke into the Anbu headquarters. Ibiki's eyebrows shot up in surprise. I'm not to blame. That was not my fault. Wild Snake Lady. Ibiki nodded slowly, raising one hand to rub his eyes. Yes, Anko would do something similar. If only you could turn around. Ibiki agreed, curious as to what the blonde was on about. And could you please remove your headband now? Ibiki shrugged and removed his bandana like Hite-ite, revealing the horrific scars on his head. And a bewhiskered smile holding a V sign drawn in permanent marker. Does that suffice as proof for you? Naruto approached the council. They just stared at the back of Ibiki's head, astounded that he had done such a thing. So, Naruto said as he approached Homura. Was Uzumaki Kushina my mother? Cool. I was only looking for people with the surname Uzumaki. You know, as an orphan, I'm always curious about my ancestors. I had no idea I was looking through my mother's file. How come no one told me who she was? Do you remember who my father was? Oh my goodness. That means Isamu-sama was similar to my grandfather. Naruto's pupils dilated. Holy crap. That means I'm the heir of the Uzumaki clan. And thus the heir of Uzushiogakure. He frowned here. Whatever is left of it. So be it. Ha. Take it, Sasuke Teme. Don't talk about Uchiha-sama like that. Yelled several civilian mothers. Be quiet, commoners. Please don't interrupt me while I'm ranting. Naruto stated arrogantly. Naruto. Iruka yipped. Honorable council members, my deepest apologies. He turned to face Iruka. Are you happy now? Iruka gave a nod. So, do any of you know who my father is? He asked, surveying the council. Several of them, particularly those who knew his mother, refused to meet his gaze. While most of them were unsure, they knew who Kushina was always hanging out with. They just hoped it wasn't true, because if it was, they would have a lot of guilt to deal with. Naruto shook his head. I'll figure it out later, he said. Can anyone tell me why so much of my CAW file sans was blacked out? That's classified, Danzo said angrily, staring at Naruto. Hey, kid, it looks like the rest of the council is getting a second wind. So far, you've done a good job of keeping them on their toes, but you might want to take the wind out of their sails before they start asking questions you don't want to answer. The Uzumaki clan's funds should suffice. How are you, Gigi? Naruto exclaimed loudly. Does the Uzumaki have any inheritance that I can claim? The two elder council members and the third both winced at this. Homura and Koharu were in charge of the majority of Konoha's finances. The Uzumaki clan had not been poor, and after Kushina's death, the two of them had invested all of the clan's wealth in Konoha's economy. When one considered that the Namikaze's funds were under the same name and thus inseparable, it accounted for nearly 25% of Konoha's total funding. If that were to suddenly become unavailable. Perhaps when you're a little older, Naruto, Hiruzen murmured, dreading the paperwork that would be required if Naruto demanded the money now, as was his right. They hadn't had enough time, so neither Kushina nor Minato had ever stipulated when Naruto would receive his inheritance. Naruto continued along this line of thought at Shinigami's prompting. But I could still request it now, couldn't I? The council sighed. Naruto shook his head. I guess I'll let it grow in interest for a while longer. Isn't it generating interest? Naruto inquired, gravely. Homura and Koharu both nodded firmly. It was right now. Naruto grinned. Good. Otherwise, I'd have to transfer it to a different bank. He became more reflective. Come to think of it, the Land of Fire's National Bank pays 5% interest on savings accounts if no withdrawals are made during the year. Perhaps it would be more prudent to put the Uzumaki clan's savings into one of those accounts. What kind of return will I get if I leave it with Konoha's banks? Sarutobi's former teammates clenched their teeth. 65%, they stated as one. Naruto grinned. Okay, I guess it's fine to leave it with Konoha then. But, you know, I could use a higher monthly stipend. The money I have now is insufficient to cover my expenses. I'll see to it, Homura said, a death's head grin on his face. Thank you. He said to the Hokage. Can Iruka and I leave now, Gigi? I'm going to have to empty his wallet of ramen bills. Iruka's eyes welled up with anime tears. Oh, the blonde said as he exited the room. Hyuga-sama? Hiashi approached the boy and instinctively caught the vial of a clear substance thrown at him by Naruto. What is this? He inquired. Naruto grinned. Combine it with 10 liters of water. Yurei stated that the resulting solution would easily wash away those marks. Haishi's pupils dilated. He had been duped by the boy. To him. Another voice stopped him just as he was about to leave the room. Excuse me, Uzumaki, Naruto said as he turned to face Inoichi. Every month, several jonin get together to play poker. They are permitted to bring a guest. We'd be delighted if you could join us as our guest, Shikaku replied on behalf of his friend. Naruto grinned. Isn't it Thursday? Inoichi made a blink. How did you manage? Inoichi-san, Shikaku-san, I thank you for the offer, but I have already accepted an invitation from Anko-san. I hope to see you there. The room descended into chaos as soon as the door was shut. Almost everyone had a different take on what had happened or was questioning what had just occurred. However, the first question to be answered was posed by Haruno Sakuri, whose shrieking voice could be heard above the din. 6%. Why does that little punk have such high interest? We only receive 4% per year. She started ranting about how unfair it was and how the Hokage was favoring certain people. This went on for a while, until Hiruzen looked pleadingly at Koharu. Smiling slightly, the female kunoichi placed 2 fingers in her mouth and whistled loudly. Everyone quieted down and turned to look at her. I'm sure we can answer most of your questions if you calm down. Let's start with Haruno question, Sans Homura explained. Uzumaki is getting such a high interest rate because withdrawing the entire Uzumaki fortune from Konoha would literally destroy our economy. The council blinked as one. Homura explained, sighing. To put it mildly, the Uzumaki clan was filthy rich. Almost every member saved everything they could. In Uzushiogakure, they were literally royalty, and they were almost entirely self-sufficient. Then consider how long their lives were. Some people had been saving money for over a century. They were also once a large and well-organized clan. When the genocide occurred, they sealed all of their treasure in the same scroll that had sealed their death's memories. It was all given to Kushina. And when she died, it all went into Konoha's banks. If her son drew that amount. Homura trembled. It's not worth thinking about. Do you believe I care? Sakuri screamed. The Haruno merchant family has 4% of Konoha's entire fortune. We will take our money elsewhere if we do not get an equal deal. Hiyashi arched his brow. 4% of a city's budget was a large sum of money, especially considering it belonged to an ordinary civilian. Of course, the Hyuga clan possessed more, but... And the Uzumaki's funds account for a full quarter of Konoha's funding, Kaharu said, losing patience with the woman. I say this with all due respect. Shut up. Sakuri gaped openly like a fish. More than that, sighed Sarutobi. The council looked to him as one of them. What? Danzo inquired. We owe them much, much more than that. An impatient civilian waved his hand. Of course, their great sacrifice, blah, blah, blah. He winced as he noticed the others' stares at him. I meant in terms of monetary value, Sarutobi joked. We use a lot of Uzumaki seals in Konoha. Seals are used for early warning, privacy, disease prevention, building reinforcement, protection, storage, and even to help keep food fresh. Those seals were not purchased from the Uzumaki. What? Kaharu and Homura were pale. They were reminded now. The agreement was that we would pay the Uzumaki for each year that these seals remained operational. Not a single one of them has yet to fail. If Naruto deposited his money in the National Bank of the Land of Fire, he would be informed that Konoha was 13 years behind on payments for the use of those seals. The mere curiosity of such a thing would be troublesome? Shikaku provided the goods. Sarutobi gave a nod. That was an excellent use of the term. Alright. So now we know why Naruto has so much money. How come none of us were aware of his ancestry? Aburame Shibi inquired. Many eyes were drawn to the Bug Clan's leader. He didn't often speak up in meetings. The third simply shrugged. He's the last of the Scarlet Warrior's son. Who knows how many assassination attempts would have been made against him if that had leaked. What was his father's name? Hiyashi inquired abruptly. That's classified, said Sarutobi, Kaharu, Homura, and Danzo together. Hiyashi nodded, his suspicions validated. He was now certain that he knew who the Namikaze heir mentioned by Urei was. It was very likely that the man was also training Naruto. Just look at how he handled the council meeting. He'd made them irritable and less likely to think clearly by keeping them waiting. He had caught them off guard with his cavalier treatment of the Anbu, followed by his suddenly mature demeanor. He'd changed his call signs all the time, from clan heir to prankster to skilled ninja, nervous individual to excitable child, never staying still long enough for anyone to pin him down. He had kept them guessing with his antics with the Anbu, his knowledge of root, forcing Kaharu to reveal his mother's identity, his prank on Konoha's head torture expert, and then reminding everyone in the room of his social status. Hiyashi raised his head. Uzumaki had been summoned here to be judged, and he had walked out of the room a winner. Hiyashi wasn't sure how many of them realized he had played them all. What about his infiltration of the Anbu headquarters? Danzo made a demand. What about his reference to a root program? Ibiki countered, his bandana firmly reattached to his head. We'll have to look into that, Sarutobi mused, peering out the corner of his eye at Danzo. He was aware of the program and suspected that it was not as over as Danzo claimed. Despite this, Danzo wielded considerable political power, and the Hokage could not make any overt moves against him in the absence of proof. Naruto had just handed him proof. He would not, however, completely disband the root program at this time. He admitted that some things were better left in the shadows. But he'd been given the opportunity to monitor it, and he'd take it with both hands. As for his breaking into the Anbu headquarters, I'd say it shows that we might need a little more security, don't you? Ibiki frowned. Good day, Lord Hokage. Before the council was dismissed, the third asked and answered a few more questions. He sighed and refilled his pipe before opening a secret drawer in his desk to retrieve a very special book with a bright orange cover. He sighed and leaned back, attempting to relax. After that, he felt he deserved it. A loud knock came from his office door. The professor immediately jumped, dropping his book as he lost his grip on it. Enter, he said as he slid his student's book back into its drawer. As Wolf, Lizard, Hawk, and Cat entered the room, he blinked. These four were among his most senior Anbu. Lord Hokage, the Anbu said, kneeling down. Rise, he said quietly, hoping that whatever this was not going to cause him any more paperwork. What can I do to repay my devoted Anbu? Said the old man warmly. The Anbu looked at each other and nodded as one. Wolf drew a large piece of paper from behind his back and placed it on the Hokage's desk with a flourish. Wolf began, this is a petition. Signed by a total of over 200 individual Anbu requesting a pay raise. Sarutobi blinked as he examined the piece of paper. He had not anticipated this. I am sorry to inform you, Lord Hokage, Yugao, Cat, said, sounding regretful but resolute, that if these demands are not met, all those who have signed here have agreed to go on strike. The third Hokage began with surprise. The Anbu were the elite. They obeyed orders to the letter and carried out missions that no one else would attempt. And now they're threatening to go on strike against him? You can't do it. He exclaimed. You're Anbu. Anbu will not go on strike. Such an event has never occurred in Konoha's history. Lizard said stiffly, with all due respect, sir. No previous Anbu had to deal with the same extenuating circumstances. Extraordinary circumstances? Sarcastically, Sarutobi stated. Please tell me what extenuating circumstances would lead to 200 of Konoha's most devoted shinobi requesting a pay raise. Uzumaki Naruto, Hawk responded quickly and politely, the word coming through clenched teeth, which could have been caused by the syrupy substance that had gummed his teeth together. The god of shinobi looked at each of the Anbu in turn before allowing his head to thud against the desk. That boy would be his undoing.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.